Here at our farm, we have collaborated with the Soil and Water of Scott County, Virginia, and they have a lot of wonderful programs on beginning farmers, new farmers, any type of farmer. You know, the soil and water conservation is all about preserving our natural resources, and that's really important to us as regenerative farmers, because without our natural resources, we can't keep doing the things that we're doing, raising our animals in a clean, ethical way. So we have implemented having water and electric fence all over our farm, and I can show you a little demonstration on how our water works. So we have these little water points all over our farm. We put in 12,000 feet of water line, and they're spaced 100, 300, 164 foot. You can't go anywhere on this farm without being 164 feet away from one of these water points, and they're hidden. You know, pressure water to a regenerative farmer, best thing. Pops and pressure water is the best thing since sliced bread. It's so easy. We can go and pull this water hose up out of our chickens and water our chickens when we need to. But it's so important to have this kind of water, 164 foot from all of our animals. It wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't have been able to afford to put 12,000 feet of water line all over our farm without tapping in some of the resources for the soil and water in our county. They'll pay a percentage of your project. In our case, they paid 80% of all of our 12,000 foot of water line, and I think it was around 5,500 foot of fence. So we were able to better manage our animals because we worked with Soil and Water and NRCS. And if you're a beginning farmer or a young farmer, they have incentives for that as well. So I'd recommend just going to your local Soil and Water Board or NRCS, talking with them, see how they can help you. All those guys in this sphere are really eager to help young local people trying to make a living farming. It's a dying breed, and they want to help you.
So I grew up on a conventional dairy, like I said, and so when I went to school, I started learning a lot about biology and how plants work and how soils work and how animals work. And then Nate, my business partner, he has been really big into regenerative agriculture. So he started talking to me about regenerative agriculture and raising animals and producing food this way. And I was like, hang on a minute, this makes a lot of sense from what I've been learning in school and what I've learned my whole life, raising animals and being around animals. Like, we need to put them in their natural environment, and believe it or not, they are healthier. It's easier to raise them this way because you're not fighting against every natural instinct that they have. You know, pigs root, chickens grub, let's let them do it. And so that's how I got into the regenerative agricultural world.
I decided that I wanted to try to be part of the soil and water conservation for Scott County, because Scott County got awarded almost $2 million to be spent inside the county helping farmers in our area. We help farmers with building fences, internal fences for rotational grazing. We put in water systems for rotational grazing. We build feed shelters in the wintertime for deep bedding. And so what was happening is that if that money does not get allocated to farmers in Scott County, it goes back to DC, it goes back to Richmond. And so once I started my journey, I knew I've met a lot of people that want to start doing this, want to start farming, want to start rotational grazing, want to start implementing some of the same models we are. And so, but they couldn't really afford to do it. And so I just felt like the money wasn't being, the people on the board. They needed somebody on the board that had new ideas and that could really push this regenerative agriculture. Don't want to take anything away from the people of our local soil and water. They're wonderful. They're amazing. Our local extension agent, Scott Gerald, wonderful. So educated, smart. But we needed somebody that was in the fray. We needed somebody that was in the busyness of regenerative farming and the practices and could be an advocate for our farmers here in Scott County. Everything on our farm, we're trying to look at how we can work
with nature, not against nature. I think the way that the soil and water conservation comes in and plays a role in our farm is the goal of our soil and water conservation is to preserve the water and the soil on our farms. So when we look at that, in my instance, on my regenerative farm, I'm looking to build organic matter in my soil. The more organic matter in the soil, the more water my soil can obtain, the more drought resistant I am, the better I am at being able to grow lush forage. So we put fences in to keep cows from destroying our natural springs. We build skirts that are really beneficial in preserving the animals to use that water if there was a case we had to. And then we pretty much fence the water out, put waters around the farm so we can rotationally graze. Because in conventional farming, well, you can't fence cattle out of the only water source. So then if you're rotational grazing, you can't move cattle, 500 yards from the water on a 90-degree day and expect them to go get the grass 500 yards away. They're just going to stay around the water. And then in turn, it just destroys the entire creek because they're on the banks, they're muddy, they're heavy. One thing that we've done to kind of preserve our soil is, and keep it from getting disturbed and mucked up all the time from our cows, is we raise a South Pole cow. And they're about 1,200 pounds or 1,100 pounds. So it's a lot smaller, less disturbance, less footprint. I think the most helpful thing for me is that it put me around people that were smarter than me and that were able to help me organize and design a rotational grazing system, where to put water points at, and as well, financially, there's no way I could afford to do the things that we've done without the aid of the NRCS. So the first thing we had to fix was the microbiology in our soil. How do we fix the microbiology in our soil? That's all done by macronutrients. How do you fix that? Well, you have to give the macronutrients food. Okay, so when you talk about food for macronutrients, your soil 90% of the time, or it's going to be 50-50. It's either going to be fungal dominant or bacteria dominant soil. And I'm not a scientist, but to my understanding, you want your soil to be a bacteria dominant soil. And so that's going to give the macronutrients something to feed upon and give the right environment. We also bought a compost tea brewer, vortex brewer. And so we have compost piles. We'll then take that compost, look at it underneath the microscope, make sure it's bacteria dominant, and then it has the right things that we need in our soil, the macronutrients wise, and then we'll spray that compost tea across our fields. So number one, you have to get your macronutrients right. You have to get your soil biology right. You have to get your everything jiving in the soil. Then once you have that fixed, you can start trying to do pasture management with rotational grazing. So we fix the soil, we put pressure on the ground to keep things in a stage of growth with our animals. And then we have to look at maintaining that. And then we use our chickens as our organic fertilizer. We are planning to do a lot of deep bedding and spread that out on our fields to help us. We're just trying to gain carbon on the ground. I mean, we've done things as we bought azomite from St. George, Utah, and hauled it here. It's an A to Z mineral. It's mined out of St. George and Lehigh, Utah. It's great. We've also limed our farm. There's never been a chemical on this farm. It's just trying to fix the soil biology and then trying to maintain that through a core graft ecosystem of animals. So yeah, I just want to keep going with all the projects I can do because we have to utilize the funds that are available to us. And I think a lot of people are afraid to go and sign up for these projects because they think that, well, I can only get this one time, or I'm scared of what the government, I have to maintain it for so many years, or I don't want to have to go ask for money. It's not any of that. These organizations are designed to help farmers, and in Scott County at least, there's not as big as demand for doing these types of people are not just beating down the door to come do these projects. So I think it's important to educate people that, hey, these are good things to use and we couldn't do what we do without these programs.